Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Ascension Teachings, and today we're going into the pineal gland and the light body activation. But with that said, before we go any further, I do want to mention a couple of things. That ascension comes in all forms and there's different types of ascension. Now of course, we hear about people wanting to obtain the rainbow light body. For some people in general as well, it's about going to another dimension. But it's a little bit of both and more, and I'll explain. For starters, for some it could be raising their frequency in general. It could be that some might go to another dimension with these coming times. Some might stay and be a guide in physical form. For some, it might be about obtaining the rainbow light body, to where, with that included, going up and beyond that, it's about the, we could say, unification back with Source. So ascension, in the purest state, is raising one's frequency. It's going from the state that you're in to another state. But there is different levels to it, and that's something that I want people to think about, because it's not all about just getting to the top straight away. For some, if they don't go to the next dimension or go to another planet or what have you, it's not that they're not good people, for example. It's that their journey hasn't allowed them yet to learn or experience what they've needed to experience to go to another state of consciousness or reality. So this is why we left Source, was to experience and gain knowledge in every single form, and it's got to be different for each person. Now when it comes to ascension, activating the pineal gland, obtaining the rainbow light body or activating the light body, it's got a lot to do with inner work to start off with. And so some of this does include releasing old traumas, patterns, wrong conclusions, judgments, forgiveness for yourself and for others. These things seem to be the hardest thing for us as humans to do a lot of the time, and they're pretty much what we could say is the starting phases of going through ascension. These things need to be dealt with. You can't put a rug over it and just hope it all goes away. These things have got to be processed, so that's got to be said. But then it comes to the inner work with different methodologies, modalities, techniques, and finding what works for you as well. Because what may work for me or somebody else in terms of the practices that I personally do myself on a daily basis, most of the time different from what other people do. And it's not that they're doing it the wrong way, I'm doing it the wrong way. It's all about finding what works for you. And that's what I'm here for, is to show you some tips, tools, and techniques and find out what works for you. Now, when we look at how this operates, it's all got to do with the pineal gland and the light body, because what's happening is that the pineal gland actually interfaces with the light body, which interfaces with the unified field with all that is, and I'll explain this more and more as we go along. So with the pineal gland, for example, I want to start out with an article here. Now, somebody that's done amazing work bringing science and the metaphysical together, and with a lot of supporting evidence, is Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I highly recommend his work if you've got a chance or would be interested in checking out further of what we're going to be covering a little bit, which is from him where I found some of these resources. Now, here's a document here. It's called New Crystal in the Pineal Gland, Characterization and Potential Role in the Electromechanotransduction. Now, with Joe Dispenza's work, what's really interesting with this is he references this document. And with this document here, it's all about the pineal gland. Now, what's really interesting with the conclusions is what we find within the pineal gland. Now, to start off with, the pineal gland is located pretty much in the center of the brain, and it's basically made up of what we're finding now is calcite crystals, calcite. And they're rhombus shaped in nature and they're layered. And with that said, what's important to remember is that we don't perceive this reality with our eyes. It's actually with our brain. It's getting frequencies and it's basically transmuting them into what we see. So we actually see with our brain, not our eyes. And even with the eyes, when we look at that, it can only pick up a fraction of 0.005% of physical matter, like I've talked about so many times as well. A fraction of that, so not even 1% can we actually perceive with the human eyes with the visible light spectrum. Now, it's the same with the pineal gland. How do you think we perceive dreams? What's happening is it's happening through the pineal gland, but the brain's interpreting what it's seeing as well. So I'll go into that with another episode, but what we find here is this calcite crystal. Quite amazing. So as you can see, they're layered. There we go, look at that. Quite amazing. Now, when it comes to activating the pineal gland, Joe Dispenza has got quite a unique theory, and I think he's on the mark with a lot of what he's saying. Again, check out his work if you get a chance, but here we go. So, from what Joe's saying and what this document's saying, is when you compress the calcite crystals, you get a piezoelectric effect, meaning to push or squeeze. So what's happening is, they're talking about giving pressure to the calcite crystals in the pineal gland, and you get an effect. Now, what it does is it generates electricity when stress is applied, which creates an electromagnetic field. In other words, is transmitting that energy from one form into another, thus creating an electrical charge. So what's happening is, when you apply pressure to the pineal gland, it actually has a piezoelectric effect, creating an electrical field. So why is, this important? That's what we're going to go into now. But let's think about how can we compress the pineal gland. All right, let's think about that. Tones, vibration, there are a couple of ways, and I'll elaborate. Now, with what Joe's saying, the central nervous system is like electrical wiring for the body computer. Now, inside the body computer is cerebral spinal fluid. It helps with buoyancy, helps with trauma. It has many functions, and it also helps with conductivity in the wiring of the body computer. So you hear me talk about the body computer a lot. We're talking about the wiring here. Now, this isn't exactly word for word what Joe Dispenza says. I'm sort of just articulating it in my own way, but this is very important. When breathing in and out, the sutures of the skull open and close, which also the sacrum does as well, which is the bone at the bottom of the spine. So down the bottom of the spine at the root chakra area we're talking about. So what happens is, when you breathe in and out, the tailbone actually opens and closes. There's like a sort of area there that sort of opens up, closes. Same with the sutures in the skull, which are basically the crevices in the skull where all the joining parts of the skull are, the sutures. So, to go on with this, when you breathe in and out, it causes the cerebral fluid to drain down due to gravity down the spinal cord we're talking about now. And when you breathe out, it creates a wave going up against the gravity field. Now, what he's saying is, if you could charge one molecule of that cerebral fluid, it travels up into the brain and back down within 12 hours. Basically, we can flush our brains twice a day, and this is sort of a natural thing that's happening when this is done. So with the method that I talked about earlier in the series of clenching the root chakra area, visualizing and feeling that energy going up the spine, stopping at the pineal gland and breathing out, this is what we're going into now, because this is sort of the science behind activating the pineal gland from another perspective. So like Joe's saying, what if you contract the muscle you use for intercourse or for pulling in the belly button, in the abdomen area, the debotus, as it is known to the yogis. And going on from there, he says, what will happen is, as you squeeze the muscles in and push the fluid up and against the pineal gland, and this stress begins to stress the calcite crystals in the pineal gland, it turns the pineal gland into a radio receiver. Pretty cool stuff if you look at this really from a scientific method. So from this technique, you are now open to frequencies beyond what we can normally perceive, which brings through the imagery. So a way that I can describe this, sort of like at the start, imagine that what's happening is when the pineal gland is activated, it's open to frequencies beyond what we're usually experiencing, thus acting like a television screen. Again, think about it. We've got all these frequencies, all these vibrations around us, just like television and radio waves. We can't see the television and radio waves, but what happens? We get, tuning on a radio station, bang, we pop into a station, you get some music, you get some news. What about television? You turn it on, all right, straight away you got an image. Where's all that coming from? All waves, frequencies, all the same sort of thing that we're talking about here, and that's how it works with the pineal gland. So charging the fluid, pushing it up, makes it go to the brain, which creates a field or adds to the field we got already, in my opinion, which is the Merkaba. It's basically interfacing the electrical charge, opens this up. It's basically like turning on the pineal gland when you can activate it, hooks into the Merkaba, and that's where we're pulling all the information in from. So this also activates the sympathetic nervous system, in effect creating an external electromagnetic field. This affects the brain going into a gamma brainwave state, creating a super consciousness and awareness state. This also creates, like I said, a transmitter receiver with images, feeling, and in effect bringing you into a trans-dimensional state, tapping you into the quantum field. So like I said, this is like how a TV gets a frequency and then it transmutes it into an image on the television screen. To add to this, the posterior pituitary gland produces oxytocin, and what happens, this makes you feel good, it makes you feel great, and what happens is you open up, and then what happens next is that the melatonin that we naturally produce, it actually creates benzodiazepine, which shuts down survival and analyzing in the neocortex, and then this gets turned into DMT, so that's how the DMT is actually getting produced. So due to the DMT being created, what happens is it creates inner vision. It creates an unbounded experience for some time, thus making the pineal gland a trans-dimensional device, like a TV radio transmitter receiver. Now the posterior pituitary gland also creates another thing during this called vasopressin, where the cells of the body hold more water and create more light and cohesion, basically giving you a biological upgrade. So with this exercise today, because we've been going on about this, what I would like to go into is practicing that again. Get into a relaxed state, whether sitting up or laying down. It depends what works for you, though Joe Dispenza and other people do say it's better to do it sitting up. But what's happening is when you breathe in, clench the root chakra area down the bottom, and when you're doing that, you can feel energy. And what you've got to do is sort of through intention suck that up the spine, so push that up the spine, breathe in as you're doing it, stop at the pineal gland, breathe out. Again, clench at the root chakra area, suck that energy up, feel it, stop at the pineal gland, breathe out. Do that for a few minutes, and then what I want to do is combine this with another exercise that I've been very big on. Do a clearing like I always recommend, so just call in the guides, visualize that you're in a ball of light, whatever color light works for you. Do a prayer, or do the one at my website at petermaxwellslattery.com or ecityaustralia.org, whatever works for you. That's what you got to find, is what works for you when doing these exercises. I can show some blueprints and techniques, but mix it up, change it, swap it around, make it fun. Don't make it a chore, because what happens is a lot of people have expectations. They have a expectation of an outcome, but it comes down to doing the inner work. And through some of these meditations that we're doing, you may want to release old traumas, wrong conclusions, things like that can come up. Sometimes you might cry. It might not even be your stuff, but you may be releasing for Mother Earth or people that you know or that surround you in your environment, your town. It can be a number of things, and we've got a lot going on in the world right now. So basically, like I was saying with Joe Dispenza's technique, clench that root chakra area. Feel that energy coming up the spine when you do so. So clench it and just feel it going up. Stop at the pineal gland. Breathe out. Use your imagination with this if you've got to. And as you breathe out, repeat the process again. Clench the root chakra area. Feel the energy coming up the spine. Stop at the pineal gland. Breathe out. Now, do that. It could be 20 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you want to do. The more that you put into this, eventually the more you'll get out of it. But there's no guarantees with anyone and everyone that this is just going to activate it overnight. It is a process. For me, I'm quite wide open already in terms of all this sort of stuff, and I'm just trying to help others help themselves and give some tips and tools and techniques with that. So as you go through bringing the energy up to the pineal gland and breathing out, next, relax. And what I want you to do is go into a state of just awareness. Awareness, the waking mind, which is God, which is inside each and every one of us. And that's what my motivation is for this, is I see the light in every single person that I meet. And I see it in animals, I see it in all of creation. And that is what I want to, and that's my driving force, is to help people help themselves to find that light in each and every single one of them. Now, when you go into a relaxed state, from that place, go into a state of awareness and observation. Don't go into reactionary mind with anything coming up. Just observation. This is a big thing throughout a lot of different meditation techniques, and even that the masters, ETs, talk to me about, is observation. And the more that I started working with observation in my interactions, which is mainly through the three ways that we interface, whether it's a physical experience, on board a craft, or even a non-physical astral experience, it's all got to do with observation of senses, meaning sensation, which can come through with emotions and feelings, thoughts, which is the main way that we communicate throughout all planes and dimensions, through thought, ideas, epiphanies, concepts, knowingness of things to be true but we're not sure how, as you've probably heard me say a billion times. And the third thing, the mind's eye. So what happens is when you're using those three senses and you're interfacing through the Merkaba light body, we go transdimensional, and that's how we go back and forth communicating with other beings. It's all through, even if it's unseen, that Merkaba light body. Now, when you're going into a state of observation, in that state, all I want you to do is just observe sensations, anything on the body, tingling, it could be like static electricity type of feeling on the body. Observe thoughts, but let go. Just observe. Don't push for anything to happen. Don't push exactly for guides to come through or whatever. That's helping with the protection mechanism at the start, calling upon the guides, your higher self, engulfing yourself in that beautiful energy of whatever coloured light works for you. But observation, this is a big thing that I'm repeating over and over here. Why? It's not that I haven't got other exercises. I'm trying to stress the importance of observation. And this is why a lot of people can't get results, is because they're expecting something to happen straight away. And it's not about that. It's about calming the mind and going into a state of observation and being at peace with that. And when you're at peace with that, you start to tap into that oneness of the universe. Now, of course, it may be a bit harder when we're still in the body computer if the pineal gland hasn't activated yet, but the more that you can practice that, the more it can help with your emotions, your energies, reacting to people, and being at peace with acceptance with all that is. And it's a way that can also rejuvenate your own battery, your own energy throughout the day if you're having a stressful time at work or with kids or anything going on in your environment. It's a way that you can reboot yourself. So even doing something like this for 5 minutes can really just help revitalize that energy within you. So we'll leave it there for this episode of Ascension Teachings. Thank you for watching and thank you for your support, and much love.